Now, the last thing we need to do is to add in the cast shadow. So let's work on the cast shadow for the croissant first. Let me navigate to the croissant layer here. This is my croissant. Let me duplicate the croissant layer, call this one croissant cast shadow. So we'll have a shadow that's casting on the surface of the table. To work on the shadow, we need an effect called CC Slant. So just search for slant here, add it in. And then if we set the floor here on the bottom of the croissant, we can actually just create a height that's in negative position. And then we can slant it a little bit like this. And this way we can create a shadow. And after we have the shape of the shadow, let's just add in the fill effect to change the color. We can change the color to a darker brown color. Next, let's change the blending mode to a overlay. That looks pretty cool. I like that. And then we can maybe blur the edges of the shadow a little bit. Let's add in a fastbox blur effects. Let's go with a radius that's 2 points. That's pretty cool. I like that. And the next thing we need to make sure is that the shadow is only casting on the table instead of going over the table. So we need to make sure we set a alpha matte for the shadow. We can go to the track matte and select the tabletop as our alpha matte. And now it's only casting on top of the table. And it's looking pretty cool right now. However, we got a problem. If I play the animation right now, you can see the problem we have is we're zooming out of the scene here, so that right now we already set the floor for the CC Slant. However, the floor of the CC Slant is not changing, but the position of my croissant is actually changing. So you can see we're now able to link this floor to the croissant. So we need to use an expression to link the floor position to the bottom edge of the croissant. It's always using this relative position of the croissant. That's how we can get an accurate shadow. So to do that, we need to go to layer and then add a new null object. And then for this one, we're going to call this one floor null. For the floor null, I need to position it at the bottom of the croissant layer here. And then I need the floor null to go with the croissant. So in this case, once I parent the floor null to the croissant, you can see my null object is always going to tie together with the bottom of my croissant wherever this croissant layer is moving. So first we need to get that, and then we need to go to my cast shadow layer. We need to add a simple expression on the floor here. Let's hold down Option, click on the stopwatch on the floor, and over here we need to go to use this pick whip button to pick whip the layer of the floor null here. We need to take this floor null layer and then add a dot to comp. You can see it's already showing up here. And then brackets, square brackets, 0.00. So over here, it actually just means that we're going to get the absolute position of the floor null within the whole composition wherever it moves and tie that absolute position to our floor coordinates, so that our floor coordinates is always the absolute position of the floor null within the scene. And now after I do that expression, you can see my shadow layer is working well now. If I just scrub through the timeline, you can see it's actually tied together with my croissant layer. And that's exactly what I need here. So that's looking pretty cool. We're gonna do the same thing for the coffee machine here. Let's go to my coffee machine layer, and then let's duplicate the coffee machine. Call this one cast shadow, and then we need to move it on top of the other coffee machine, extend the layer all the way out. This is going to be my cast shadow. I'll use a CC Slant effect here, and then let me just do the shadow first. Let's set the floor at the bottom of the layer, and then let's drag the height to a -degree here, and then let's slant it a little bit. That's good. Let's go add a fill effect, and then change the color to a darker brown here. Change the blending mode to overlay here, so that we have some interaction between the croissant shadow and the coffee machine shadow. That looks pretty cool. Let's do a fast box blur to blur out the edges. Let's do 2 point here, maybe 4 points. Okay, that's cool. And then I need to add a alpha matte. So let's go to the track matte, make sure we select the tabletop as the alpha matte so that we're not extending over, the shadow is not extending over the table. However, we still have that issue. If I scrub through the timeline, you can see the shadow is moving around. It's not following the exact position. So we need to do that trick again here. Let's go to layer, new, null object. And this one is going to be called coffee machine floor. That's good. And make sure we drag this null object at the bottom of the coffee machine here. And then we parent the floor to the coffee machine outline, this one here. And the problem we now have is that for this outline layer is only working for the first 4 seconds. We actually need another layer to get this position of the coffee machine throughout the 9 seconds animation. So looking at this now, we can actually use this coffee machine shadow layer because this layer is having the same exact position of my coffee machine and it has the whole duration of the animation. So let's go to my coffee machine floor and parent this to the shadow layer here. That's good. And then you can see if I scrub through it, it's always going with the bottom edge of the coffee machine, wherever the coffee machine goes. So that's exactly what I want. And now I just need to add in the expression. Let's go to the cast shadow. Let's hold down Option and then click on the floor here. We need to use the pick whip here to drag to link it to the coffee machine floor and then add in dot to comp bracket square bracket 0 0. So it's getting the exact position, the absolute position of the coffee machine floor within the whole scene to add it to the floor of my CC slant so that it's always slanting based on the floor at the bottom of the coffee machine over here. Now, if I scrub through the timeline, I think it's looking pretty cool. And somehow this track matte is missing. So I need to go back to link the tabletop as my track matte. And now another thing I want to do is when it first come in, I actually want it to animate a little bit for the shadow to move a little bit. So I just want to animate the slant of the shadow. So it'll go like this. It's going to move a little bit. So at the beginning, let's set a keyframe over here. Maybe it's going to become this over here in 2 seconds. And at the beginning, I want it to be the other way, like on the right. So maybe like 160 or 150 at the beginning. Sorry. So it's going to be 150 at the beginning, and then it's going to slightly move this way here, like this. So we have a moving of the shadow here as the coffee machine is turning. And the shadow's moving. That's looking pretty cool. And then let me just ease it, go to the graph editor, just drag the handle down so that we have an easing curve like this. Maybe it's moving too much. Let's change it to 100. So we're going to change the beginning value to 100 for the shadow so that we don't have that much of a noticeable turn of the shadow. That's a bit distracting. I just want it to turn slightly while the coffee machine is turning. That looks pretty cool. Let's zoom out and see what we have now. I like that, but I feel like the edge of the table is missing its colors here. It's pretty faded, so I need to go to my table edge here and then change the color to a darker brown. Or I can just do a gradient ramp here. Let's do a gradient ramp. For the gradient ramp, we can sample the color here and then sample it again. Let's do it darker here. And then let's turn it on. Maybe the bottom is lighter and then the edge on the top is darker. Maybe it's too dark. Let's tone it back a little bit. Okay, I like that. That's pretty cool. We added in the shadow, the highlights, and the cast shadow for these objects in the scene. I think it's looking pretty cool overall.